Well, this week on Gravel, Eric Dinger relays how he has offended most of the governors in the United States with a shotgun in his hands. And we also hear from Andrew describing his most recent stranger mentee and what happens when you just don't quite click. And finally, we talk about Thanksgiving traditions and we understand why Andrew and Eric are wrong about everything, especially white gravy on their potatoes. This week on Gravel.
Well, welcome back to On Gravel. The gang is all here. We've had a busy week. We're ramping up to Thanksgiving, but by my calculation, we're still in deer season in my world. I think you boys have got some more birds in your world than mine, but I'm happy to report that I have some goose blood on my hand. My buddy Joe Horn, who unsuccessfully ran for Valley County Sheriff, called me last night. He's like, "You want to go goose hunting?" I said, "No, I do not." It's going to be a bluebird day, no wind, horrible day to go goose hunting. Well, I went. We limited, but it was pretty technical goose hunting, if you can have technical goose hunting in a big field. But anyway, so I've been involved in winged death as well. What have you been doing, boys?
On behalf of the whole hunting community, I want to say sorry for the fact that you only shot a limit through your technical hunting.
Did you say sorry?
Yeah, I'm from Minnesota. We say sorry.
It's about time.
No, that's Canadians. We know how to say about.
Yeah, it was only a limit, but hopefully there'll be many more limits in my future this fall.
Well, good luck.
What have you been doing?
Well, I spent the weekend, last part of last week and the weekend with Eric Dinger and a group of a lot of other people, but we went to the Kansas Ringneck Classic, which is a governor's hunt out in western Kansas. Colby, Kansas was the host this year. It's an event we've been supporting for many years. And we could go into all of the details about all the great pheasant hunting we did and the quail we got into and the covey of 40 birds that flew right out of the cover over Eric. But I think we should get right into the important stuff at hand and address how Eric Dinger completely offended the governor of Kansas. So, Eric, do you want to explain how you did that?
Well, this is not the first governor I've offended, even this year. It's kind of my thing, I guess. My friends would call this pulling a dinger. So I was with a couple of friends from Kansas Wildlife Parks and Tourism, and they were like, "Hey, Eric, you want to meet the governor?" This was at the banquet the night before the governor's hunt, and they say, "This is Governor Collier." And I said, "Well, nice to meet you, sir. How are you?" And, as politicians are wont to do, they say this and that drivel kind of thing. And I said, "Are you a big hunter?" He said, "Yeah, I like to hunt." I said, "Have you been out much?" Natural conversation. He said, "No, I've been pretty busy lately." It's like, "Oh, what happened? Did you get a new job?" Making light of the fact that they have a new governor in Kansas, assuming Governor Collier is the new governor. So the folks from Kansas Wildlife Parks and Tourism that introduced me give all of the body language of, somebody farts in a room and everybody's kind of looking at them like, bail out. What just happened? And so I stammer something out incoherently, and the governor says, "Well, it looks like we're about to get started. I'm going to head to my seat." And he walks away, and they're like, "What did you just do?" Well, not having done the appropriate level of research, I did not realize that this was the old governor who had just lost election.
We didn't lose. He lost the primary a little bit ago.
Well, whatever. He's not going to be the governor anymore. And so I just asked him if he got a new job, and that's why he was so busy. Because I assumed he was the new governor, or they wouldn't have introduced me as the governor. I had heard Kansas got a new governor. And so in my pea brain, I was thinking, well, this must be the new governor. It wasn't. Maybe it was the old governor, and he, in fact, is going back to his other job. Therefore, I was a total ass and made a total fool of myself and the friends who introduced me, which is the second time that's happened with the governor in a year.
His last act in office is going to be to cut the parks budget.
Right. God, not my best.
Well, he's just going to cut out that part of the parks budget that was potentially going to get spent on Powder Hook.
Yeah.
Because he's not that vindictive. No. Yeah, so important lesson for me when I invite folks to a quasi-political event with dignitaries, I need to do what I used to do when I actually worked for a governor in politics, is do a one-sheeter so that they have their cheat sheet. I didn't do that this time. I thought, well, it's not that important. That Eric's a titan in this industry, and he relates well with people, and he has ample access to the internets. I thought he knows who won the governor's race here in the state that we're going to the Govenors Ringneck Classic for. He's looked that up. He knows who the current governor is, but that was my mistake. Eric did not do that research. He was instead looking at videos of the surround view blind, I guess, on YouTube or something. But so that was my mistake, and I want to apologize.
In my defense, I did do the research. I had heard that Kansas got a new governor. I looked at the governor's website. The guy I met was the governor. I assumed he was the new governor.
So if you're a new governor, until you get inaugurated, you're called governor-elect.
Right. Did not notice that the inauguration had not happened yet. So to say I did my research is a little bit aggressive. I looked at the governor's website briefly.
I know in Nebraska they install the new governor the minute all the ballots are in, but usually there is an inauguration some months after the election.
I mean, I'm not trying to convince anybody that I did this right. I mean, this was a dipshit move if I've ever heard of one.
So while we're on Nebraska politics, we stopped in and picked up Eric in Lincoln, and there's two buildings in Lincoln that you can't miss. One's the football stadium, the other's the state capitol. Is the state capitol supposed to be in the shape of a corn cob? Is that what it is?
Oh, a corn cob. That's the first I've heard of that.
Well, it's a family show.
Yes, it's supposed to be in the form of a corn cob. Yes, it's called the corn cob of the plains.
So now that we've heard Eric's experience with the governor, a couple weeks ago, right before the election, I got to go to the South Dakota governor's hunt, and luck of the draw, I got paired in the governor's hunting party, and got to actually go out in the field and chase some ringnecks with Governor Dugard, the term-limited and outgoing governor of South Dakota. And he had with him his friend, the term-limited and outgoing governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder. So I got to hunt with two governors this year and had a wonderful experience. In the highlight of the day, we got into some chickens, we got into some pheasants, but I shot a coyote, or as they say in the Dakotas, a coyote. I'm trying to use all the pronunciations. I don't know how they do it in Glisku. What do you call those dog-like creatures in Glisku?
Quixote.
A quixote. So I killed a coyote on the edge of a cornfield I was blocking, and it came by at 10 yards. You got a full ounce and a quarter of number 5 copper-plated lead in the ear hole, and I picked it up, and because I didn't want to leave it in the field because it hadn't been harvested yet, in case the combine came through, didn't want to mess it up, and so I hold it up over my head, and the first person who sees it is Governor Dugard, and he clapped and cheered for me, and the coyote is the state animal, or the state mammal of South Dakota, and it is unprotected. You can shoot it any time. In fact, you're encouraged to. The state bird in South Dakota is the ringneck pheasant, and they shoot millions of them every year. The state fish in South Dakota is the walleye. They catch hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of them. South Dakota is a state that likes to eat their symbols, and I want to amend how I voted a few weeks ago when I said North Dakota was the better of the Dakotas. South Dakota is the better of the Dakotas, and Governor Dugard from South Dakota helped me learn that lesson.
So did your friend from South Dakota that badgered you about it all of the trip to Kansas.
I couldn't hear you because I had flavored sunflower seeds plug in my ears.
I converted him on that too.
You are one governor short of a limit.
I am.
McKean, I converted him on flavored sunflower seeds too.
You didn't give him that nasty dill cheddar thing, did you?
Oh, I did, and he loved
Oh
it.
yeah. No, I didn't. I did not love the dill cheddar. The cheeseburger ones were eh. No, none of them are as good as just regular sunflower seeds. But we were driving around the gravel of rural Kansas, and it was a good way to keep my stomach from growling. But no,
So at what point did you offend these two governors? Because I think that's what you're supposed to do when you see a governor, isn't it?
yeah, you see, I didn't. I first of all, I didn't know that Governor Snyder was going to be there, and I saw him at this reception and quickly Googled some facts about him, and so that I knew that he was outgoing, that he was term limited, and that he wasn't on the ballot in a few weeks. So this was before the election, and so I was able to talk to him a little bit about politics, but he made it really clear he was there to talk hunting. So that's what we talked about, and football. He wanted to talk, Wolverine, Big Ten. He's a Wolverine guy. He lives in Ann Arbor, but he wanted to talk Big Ten football, which is a little embarrassing for me from Minnesota, where the Gophers aren't really playing Big Ten football this year. They're playing against Big Ten teams, but they don't win any of them. But no, we had a good conversation, and I didn't offend him at all. And in fact, he probably is going to give some huge state contracts to my company as a result. That's a
Amateur.
joke. I'm kidding. That's not true. That's not a forward-looking statement. Please, Security Exchange Commission, don't regulate us over that.
Wouldn't it be good for our podcast if the SEC was to regulate it?
No, we don't want the FCC doing it either, because we say some crazy things.
We try to.
Well, I stayed home while you guys were gallivanting. And by the way, why didn't you record a podcast while you were on gravel together?
We talked about it. We did not have a lot of spare time. I had some obligations while I was there. I had to give the keynote address Saturday night. And so I spent a lot of time, when we weren't actually hunting and driving around trying to find birds, I was in my hotel room writing, or we were, working the room, working the crowd. So,
by the way, Andrew, not only did he give the keynote address on Saturday night, he got a standing ovation for the words that came out of his mouth. And he almost cried. During his speech, he almost cried. That's how into it he was, and he just enraptured this audience, and they stood joyfully and clapped for him at the end. It was beautiful.
I think they were just clapping because I was done. They were happy to be done.
I know it's hard for you to take a compliment, but you did a good job. It's still harder for me to give one.
Well, thanks, Eric. And that little twinge of emotion was unexpected. I was just trying to talk about, the friendships you develop hunting. And, I started to talk about the host, the guy that I've been hunting out in Kansas with 1 weekend a year for 6 years. I mean, that's how much time I spend with him, is 1 weekend a year for 6 years. But, the closeness of our friendship, I care about the guy, I care about his family. And when I started to talk about that, a frog came up in my throat. It surprised me. So I had to extricate myself from that topic and go to more fiery things like the Pittman-Robertson tax and things.
Well,
so we're talking about
too.
birds a little bit here, Andrew, but you're still deer hunting, so I want to hear about some big game stuff.
Yeah, it was an interesting week. I have twin boys. They're seniors in high school. In Montana, you can start to hunt when you're 11. At least these kids could, because their birthday fell in the right place. Normally it's 12. You have to hunt with a licensed adult until you are 15, and you can hunt by yourself. But either because my boys like my company so much, or they know that I'm going to gut their deer and do all the work, they've been reluctant to strike out on their own. Even though I've kind of said, hey, go out with your friends, make your own way. Last year, my boy Ellis did that. He went out, shot a deer at last light, gutted it all by himself, and then got horribly lost trying to make his way back to the pickup. So, and lost cell service anyway. Finally, after fretting about him for a couple hours, his friend, whom he had contacted before he lost cell service, called me and said he's got a deer down. I should come help him. So I finally made my way to where he was with the deer out in the prairie, and it looked like 30 deer had been mutilated. The field dressing took about an acre. He had dragged that deer around. There were guts everywhere. There was lung tissue slung across the sagebrush everywhere. But we got it out. It was a really big deal to him to do pretty much everything himself. My other twin, Merlin, hadn't quite hit him until this year. This past week, he just said, we've moved to a new house, and it's actually right out kind of in the pretty good deer hunting area. And on Sunday, he just said, I'm going to go hunting. And he walked out the door, and he went hunting. And he texted me a couple hours later and said, I got one down, Dad. And I went and helped him get it out. But it's a real milestone, I think, for especially kids, but for any new hunter to do that all by themselves, largely because the choices they make, there's no escaping from. It's their choice. They have to live with the results, either good or bad. They can't blame it on anybody else, or nobody else can take credit for it either. So they were real rites of passage for both of those boys, and it was pretty interesting to see Merlin, the pride he had in this deer. It was a pretty nice 3x3 mule deer with some really nice brow tines, which we don't see in our country very often. But it wasn't the magnitude of the antlers by any means that was the trophy part of that deer. It was really the experience, and so that was pretty interesting.
Do you think that they hunt with you because they like to hunt with you, and so that's why they've not wanted to break off? I mean, they just truly enjoy your company?
I really think it is. I mean, we have a pretty good time when we're hunting. It's a different experience. We're not worried about, sort of stuff domestically in the house, or it's just whatever. I'm not saying it's more liberating or more freeing, but it's just different. And I think we all enjoy each other's company anyway, but it's nice to enjoy each other's company when we're walking and talking and, making all those choices you make as a hunter. But I also think it's because they haven't felt confident in their abilities as hunters. And so it was easier for them to let me make the decisions and for them to just go along rather than having to live with the results.
So was the emotion you felt when he said, I got a deer down, was it pride, like, yes, my boy had done it? Or was it a little sorrow in that, oh man, my boy did it without me?
That's a great question. The very first spike of emotion was pride. I was so excited for him. It took a while, actually, as we're in a CWD area, so we had to bone out everything, and it's changed the way we butcher deer. But last night we were doing all that together, and that made me a little bit sad. Not because he had done it by himself, but because as a senior in high school, they're going to be in college next year, I presume, and we might not get to do this with the regularity that we have in